I am Zachary, 34 years old, and for my entire life, I was the invisible man in my own family. I was the person you called when the basement flooded at 2 a.m., or when the Wi-Fi stopped working during a dinner party, or when the taxes needed to be filed. But when it came time to take the family photo, I was always the one holding the camera. Before I tell you how my mother ended up fainting in a 5-star hotel in Paris while watching my face on a giant screen, let me know where you're tuning in from in the comments. I want to know who is riding shotgun with me on this journey. It started, as most endings do, with a celebration. My younger brother, Liam, had just gotten engaged. Liam is 30, 4 years younger than me, and possesses a smile that my mother, Elena, likes to say, could light up a cathedral. He has always been the golden boy. If Liam broke a vase, it was because the vase was placed poorly. If I broke a vase, I was clumsy and careless. That was the dynamic. I accepted it because I thought that was just how families worked. You play the hand you're dealt. The engagement dinner was held at Le Jardin, a French bistro downtown that my father, Robert, couldn't really afford but insisted on booking to impress Chloe's parents. Chloe, my future sister-in-law, comes from old money, or at least that's what my parents believed. Her father was a real estate mogul, and her mother was on the board of every charity that mattered in the city. My parents were desperate to merge our family with theirs. They saw it as a lifeline, a way to elevate their social standing which had been stagnating for years. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing my best suit. It wasn't designer. I bought it off the rack at a department store, but it was clean and pressed. I worked in IT support for a mid-sized logistics company. At least that's what I told my family. It was easier that way. Kept their expectations low and their hands out of my pockets. When I walked into the private dining room, the air was already thick with the scent of expensive lilies and desperation. My mother was rearranging the place cards, her hands fluttering nervously. "Zachary," she said without looking up. "You're here. Good. Can you check the lighting? It feels a bit dim in the corner where Mr. Kensington is sitting. We can't have him squinting." "Hi, Mom," I said, walking over to give her a hug. She offered me her cheek, cold and powdery, her eyes still scanning the table. "I'm happy for Liam." "Yes, well, just make sure you don't bore Chloe's father with talk about servers and coding tonight. All right?" She finally looked at me, her gaze critical. "And fix your tie. It's crooked." I fixed my tie. "I won't say a word, Mom." I moved to the corner to adjust the dimmer switch on the wall. From this vantage point, I watched my family. My father was at the bar, laughing too loudly at a joke the bartender made, checking his watch every 30 seconds. He looked tired. The lines around his eyes were deeper than I remembered. I knew business hadn't been good lately. I monitored the local market trends, but he would never admit that to me. To him, I was just the son who didn't have the head for business. Then Liam walked in with Chloe. They looked like a magazine cover. Liam was wearing a tuxedo that probably cost 3 months of my reported salary. He was beaming, shaking hands, radiating that effortless charm that had gotten him out of every speeding ticket and failed math test his entire life. "Zach," Liam shouted, coming over to slap me on the back. "Glad you made it, buddy. Hey, keep an eye on the wine service tonight, will you? Make sure the glasses never go empty. Dad's stressing about the service." "Congratulations, Liam," I said, ignoring the command. "She's a great girl." "She's a jackpot, brother," he whispered, winking. "A literal jackpot." I felt a hand slip into mine. I looked down to see Sarah, my fiancée, standing beside me. Sarah is a pediatrician. She deals with crying babies and worried parents all day, so handling my family was a walk in the park for her. She had a calmness about her that grounded me. "Be nice," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "I'm always nice," I muttered. Dinner was an exercise in endurance. I sat at the far end of the table, next to a cousin I hadn't seen in 5 years and an empty chair that was meant for Chloe's aunt who didn't show up. I watched as my parents fawned over the Kensingtons. They laughed at jokes that weren't funny. They agreed with political opinions I knew they didn't hold. It was a performance. Halfway through the main course, my father stood up to make a toast. He tapped his spoon against his crystal glass, a sound that always made my teeth ache. To my son Liam, Dad boomed, his face flushed with wine. The pride of the family, the one who carries our name forward with such grace and ambition. And to Chloe, the daughter we always wanted. I felt Sarah stiffen beside me. The daughter we always wanted. It was a strange thing to say when I was sitting right there, the eldest son, engaged to a wonderful woman. But I was used to it. I took a sip of water. Liam, Dad continued, I know you're going to build an empire. You have the vision that this family needs. The room applauded. I clapped too. I looked at Liam. He was soaking it up, but I saw something in his eyes. A flicker of panic. I knew that look. It was the look he had when he was 12 and stole a candy bar, waiting to see if he'd get caught. Liam didn't have a vision. Liam had a mountain of credit card debt and a job in consulting that no one could quite explain. After the speeches, I saw an opening. I walked over to where Liam and Dad were standing with Mr. Kensington. I wanted to offer a gift. Not a toaster or a check, but something meaningful. I had been working on a massive project in my spare time, a digital infrastructure platform for managing large-scale events. I wanted to offer to set up their entire wedding logistics for free. It would save them thousands of dollars and ensure everything ran perfectly. Dad, Liam. I stepped into their circle. Dad's smile tightened. Zachary. We were just discussing the real estate market in the Hamptons. That's fascinating, I said politely. Actually, I wanted to talk about the wedding. I've been developing a system that handles vendor contracts, guest logistics, and real-time budgeting. I'd love to gift my services to manage the wedding planning. It would take a huge load off Mom. There was a silence. Mr. Kensington looked at me with mild interest. Logistics? That's a crucial part of any operation. But my mother had appeared out of nowhere, like she had a radar for potential embarrassment. She placed a hand on my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Oh, Zachary, that's sweet, she said, her voice dripping with condescending sweetness. But this is going to be a very complex event. High society. We need professionals, honey. Not your little computer programs. It's not a little program, Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's enterprise level. I could save you. Zachary, please. Dad cut in, his eyes cold. Don't bore us with technical details. Liam has hired a planner from Paris. Top tier. We don't need to cut corners. We're not looking for a discount wedding, Zach. Liam laughed, clapping me on the shoulder again. But hey, maybe you can help the DJ set up his speakers? The group laughed. Even Mr. Kensington chuckled, though he looked at me with a strange expression, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. I felt the heat rise up my neck. It wasn't the rejection of the work. It was the dismissal of my worth. I wasn't offering a discount. I was offering expertise. We know, honey. Mom patted my cheek. You're very good with your gadgets. Why don't you go check on Sarah? She looks lonely. I walked away. My hands were shaking. I went out to the terrace to get some air. Sarah followed me a minute later. They did it again, she said softly, leaning against the railing beside me. I'm invisible to them, I said, looking out at the city lights. Unless they need something fixed. They think I'm just some low-level tech guy. They have no idea. Sarah smiled, a secret smile that I loved. No, they don't. And that's their loss. Did you check your email? I frowned. No. Why? Check it. I pulled out my phone. There was a new email at the top of my inbox. It wasn't from my boss at the logistics company. It was from a private server. The sender was A. Sterling. Subject, Project Z. Dear Mr. Whitmore, we have reviewed the architecture for the anonymous philanthropic platform you designed. It is brilliant. I want to meet. I believe we can change the way charity is done on a global scale. Name your time. Arthur Sterling. I stared at the screen. Arthur Sterling, the billionaire venture capitalist. The man who could buy and sell my father's company 100 times over before breakfast. He was responding to me, to the little computer program my mother had just sneered at. I looked back through the glass doors. I saw my parents laughing, pouring more expensive wine they couldn't afford, celebrating a golden child who was hollow inside. They were chasing status, unaware that the biggest opportunity in the room was standing outside on the balcony, freezing in a department store suit. They don't know, I whispered to Sarah. Are you going to tell them? She asked. I watched my mother fuss over Liam's tie, a look of pure adoration on her face, a look she had never given me. No, I said, and for the first time in my life, I felt a cold resolve settle in my chest. I'm going to let them be exactly who they are. The weeks following the engagement party were a blur of frenetic energy, none of which included me. The family group chat, usually dormant, exploded with activity. Photos of flower arrangements, venue options in Europe, and suit fittings pinged on my phone every hour. I wasn't asked for an opinion, but I was kept in the loop just enough to know that money was being hemorrhaged at an alarming rate. I tried one more time, just once. I knew, based on a credit check I had run on my father's company, a habit born of anxiety and a need to protect them from themselves, that the business was leveraging debt to keep the lights on. A wedding in Paris was financial suicide. I went to my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon. It was the house I grew up in, a sprawling colonial that looked majestic from the street but was slowly rotting from the inside. The roof needed repairs, the plumbing was ancient, but my mother insisted on spending money on landscaping because curb appeal is everything. I found Mom in the sunroom, surrounded by fabric swatches. Mom, we need to talk about the budget. I started, sitting down opposite her. She didn't look up from a swatch of velvet. We're not discussing money, Zachary. It's vulgar. Your father has it handled. Dad took out a second mortgage, didn't he? I asked quietly. Her head snapped up. The mask slipped for a second, revealing panic, before the rehearsed anger took over. How dare you snooped into our private affairs? You handle computers, Zachary. Stick to that. Do not lecture us on finance. This wedding is an investment. When Liam marries Chloe, our families merge. It opens doors. It secures the legacy. The legacy isn't going to matter if you're bankrupt. I pressed. I can help. I have savings. I can help structure the debt so you don't lose the house. She laughed. It was a harsh, brittle sound. Your savings? What, your little IT salary? Oh, Zachary, you're sweet, but you have no idea what kind of world we operate in. We need millions, not your rainy day fund. Just stop. You're being negative. You always were. You always were. The words triggered a memory so vivid it nearly knocked the wind out of me. I was 16. I had spent the entire summer mowing lawns and fixing neighbors' computers to save up for a car. I had found a beat-up Honda Civic I wanted to buy. I brought the cash, $3,000 in crinkled bills, to the kitchen table. My father had swept it into his briefcase. We need this for the family, Zach. Business is tight. We'll pay you back. They never did. 2 months later, on Liam's 16th birthday, they bought him a brand new Mustang. When I asked why, Mom had said, Liam represents the family image at school, Zachary. He can't drive a junker. You understand, don't you? You're the mature one. I was always the mature one. The one who understood. The one who sacrificed so Liam could shine. Back in the sunroom, I stood up. Okay, Mom. I tried. Just be happy for your brother. She dismissed me. Oh, and check the printer in the study on your way out? It's jamming again. I fixed the printer. I always fixed the printer. A few days later, my phone buzzed. A notification from WhatsApp. You have been removed from the group, Whitmore Wedding Planning. I stared at the screen. Removed. Not by accident. It was deliberate. I texted Liam. Hey, did I get booted from the chat? No reply. I texted Mom. Is everything okay with the wedding planning? 3 hours later, a reply. We're just streamlining the chat, honey. Too many notifications were annoying people. We'll keep you posted on the big stuff. Streamlining. That was corporate speak for firing someone. I went to work the next day feeling a heavy stone in my gut. My work wasn't actually at the logistics company anymore. I had quietly resigned 2 weeks prior to work full-time with Mr. Sterling's team on Project Z, now officially named the Foundation. I still left the house at 8 a.m. and wore my department store suit, going to a co-working space downtown where I managed a portfolio of assets that would make my father's head spin. But to my family, I was still the tech support guy. At lunchtime, I ran into Aunt Beatrice at a deli near my office. Beatrice is my mother's sister, a woman who collects gossip like other people collect stamps. She's the manipulator of the family. She stirs the pot and then watches it boil with a look of innocent concern. "Zachary!" she exclaimed, waving a manicured hand. "I haven't seen you since the engagement party. Are you getting excited for Paris?" "Paris is always beautiful," I said neutrally. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "I saw the invitations. They are exquisite. Gold leaf, letterpressed. Very chic. Your mother said she spent a fortune on the calligraphy alone." "Invitations." My heart skipped a beat. "They went out." Beatrice's eyes widened theatrically. "Oh, you didn't get yours?" "They went out last week. I got mine on Tuesday. Maybe the mail is slow." She knew. She absolutely knew I hadn't received one. She was enjoying this. "I'm sure it's just delayed." I lied, my voice tight. "I hope so," she said, sipping her iced tea. "It's going to be such a small, intimate affair. Only the creme de la creme, as your mother says. It would be a shame if... Well, never mind." "If what, Aunt Beatrice?" "If they had to make cuts. For the venue capacity. But surely not immediate family. That would be scandalous." She checked her watch. "Oh, look at the time. Tata, Zachary." She left me standing there, the sandwich in my hand turning to ash. I drove home that evening with a sense of dread that I couldn't shake. I checked the mailbox. It was the daily ritual now. Bills. A flyer for a pizza place. A magazine for Sarah. Nothing. I went inside. Sarah was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. She took one look at my face and put the knife down. "Still nothing?" she asked. "Beatrice got hers last week," I said, loosening my tie. "They're out, Sarah. Everyone has them." "Maybe it got lost," Sarah said, though she didn't sound convinced. "Or maybe they're handing yours to you in person. Since your family?" "They mailed Beatrice's," I countered. "And she lives 10 minutes away." I paced the living room. The silence from my family was deafening. No calls about flights. No questions about my suit measurements. No requests for help with the playlist. It was as if I had ceased to exist. "I need to know," I said. "I can't keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked. "I'm going to wait until the RSVP deadline," I said. "If I don't have it by then, I'll ask." The days ticked by. The RSVP deadline was approaching. I saw photos on social media. Cousins posting their invites with captions like "Paris, here we come," and so honored to celebrate Liam and Chloe. Even my father's golf buddies were posting about booking their flights. I was the only one in the dark. Then, I overheard a conversation that shattered the last shred of my denial. I was visiting my parents' house to drop off some tax documents Dad had asked for. Because, of course, I still did their taxes. I let myself in with my key. The house was quiet. I walked toward the study and heard my father's voice. He was on the phone, likely with his lawyer or accountant. I know, he was saying, his voice hushed. "The inheritance from my mother is tied up in the trust until the end of the year. I can't touch it. Look, once the wedding happens, Chloe's father is going to invest in the firm. It's a done deal. We just need to survive until then." He paused. "No, Zachary doesn't know. He thinks we're fine. If he knew we were this close to the edge, he'd try to fix it with his small thinking. He'd want us to sell the house or cancel the wedding. He doesn't understand vision. He's a worker drone, not a leader. That's why we have to bet on Liam." I stood frozen in the hallway. A worker drone. Small thinking. They weren't just excluding me because they didn't like me. They were excluding me because they didn't respect me. They saw me as a liability to their grand deception. If I was there with my practicality and my small thinking, I might expose the cracks in their facade. I might ruin the con. I placed the tax documents on the hall table and walked out without making a sound. That night, the RSVP deadline passed. My mailbox was still empty. "They aren't going to invite me, Sarah," I said, staring at the ceiling in the dark. "They can't not invite you," she whispered, her voice fierce. "You're his brother. Watch them," I said. "Just watch them." The confirmation didn't come from my family. It came from Dave, a guy in accounting at my old job who I still played fantasy football with. I ran into him at a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning. "Hey, Zach." Dave grinned. "Man, you must be stoked. Paris in the spring? Classic." I forced a smile, my stomach dropping. "Yeah, classic." "When do you fly out?" he asked, stirring sugar into his latte. "My wife saw your cousin's post about the venue. The Hotel Plaza Athene? Dude, that place is insane. Isn't that like $1,000 a night?" "Something like that," I managed to say. "Well, have a blast. Send pics." He walked away, leaving me standing there with the confirmation I had been dreading. The venue was booked. The dates were set. People were booking flights. And I was standing in a coffee shop in Seattle, completely and utterly out of the loop. I couldn't take the passive silence anymore. I needed to hear them say it. I needed to look my mother in the eye and make her say the words. I drove to my parents' house. It was raining. A gray, miserable drizzle that matched my mood. I didn't use my key this time. I rang the doorbell. Felt symbolic. I was a guest now, an unwelcome one. My mother answered. She was wearing a silk robe, holding a cup of herbal tea. When she saw me, her expression didn't light up. Tightened. A subtle flinch, like she had been caught doing something wrong. "Zachary," she said, "I wasn't expecting you. Is everything okay? Can I come in?" I asked. She hesitated, then stepped back. "Of course. But make it quick. The wedding planner is calling in 20 minutes. We went into the living room. The room was pristine, filled with expensive furniture that no one was allowed to sit on. I remained standing. "I didn't get an invitation, Mom," I said. No preamble. No softening the blow. She froze. She took a slow sip of her tea, buying time. I watched her calculate, watched her construct the lie. "Oh, Zachary," she sighed, putting the cup down on a coaster. "We were meaning to talk to you about that." "Talk to me about what?" "That you invited Aunt Beatrice, my cousins, and Dad's golf buddies, but not your own son." "Lower your voice," she hissed, glancing toward the stairs. "Your father is resting. He's under a lot of stress." "I don't care about his stress," I said, my voice rising despite her warning. "I care about why I'm being erased from this family." She stood up then, drawing herself up to her full height. She smoothed her robe, her face composing itself into that cold, impenetrable mask I hated so much. "It's not about erasing you," she said calmly. "It's about aesthetics and atmosphere." "Aesthetics," I repeated, dumbfounded. "I don't fit the color scheme?" "It's better if you don't come, Zachary," she said. The words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. "You'd ruin the atmosphere." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I'd ruin the atmosphere? By being there? By supporting my brother? "You have a heaviness about you," she explained, waving her hand vaguely. "You're always so serious, so judgmental. You look at us with those eyes, calculating how much things cost, worrying about logistics. It brings everyone down. This wedding is about joy. It's about fantasy. Chloe's family is very vibrant. You don't fit in that world, honey." She walked closer, her voice dropping to a sympathetic whisper that made my skin crawl. "And honestly, we know you can't afford the trip. We didn't want to embarrass you by asking you to spend money you don't have. We were doing you a kindness." "A kindness?" I whispered. "You think excluding me is a kindness?" "We thought you'd be relieved," she said. "You never liked parties anyway. Remember your prom? You sat in the corner the whole time." "I sat in the corner because I was working the sound system because the DJ quit," I snapped. "I was saving the night, just like I always do. See?" She pointed a finger at me. "That anger, that chip on your shoulder. That is exactly what we don't want in Paris. We can't risk a scene, Zachary. This this marriage, is too important. She had almost said it. Merger. So that's it, I said, a cold clarity washing over me. I'm not rich enough, I'm not fake enough, and I might accidentally remind everyone that we aren't actually royalty. So I'm out. You can come over for dinner when we get back, she offered, as if that solved everything. We'll show you the photos. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the fear behind her eyes, the fear of being exposed as a fraud. I saw a woman so consumed by the opinion of strangers that she was willing to cut off her own flesh and blood. And in that moment the cord snapped. The tether of guilt and obligation that had bound me to them for 34 years just broke. No, I said. Excuse me? No, I won't be coming over for dinner. And you won't be showing me photos. Don't be dramatic, Zachary. It's unbecoming. I'm not being dramatic, I said, my voice incredibly calm. I'm being done. You want the atmosphere to be perfect? You got it. I won't be there. I won't be anywhere near you. I turned to leave. Zachary, she called out, a hint of panic in her voice now. If you walk out like this, don't expect us to help you when you need it. Don't expect a cent of your father's inheritance. I stopped at the door. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Mom, I said, looking back over my shoulder. You guys are broke. I know about the second mortgage. I know about the loans. There is no inheritance. Her face went white. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Goodbye, Mom, I said. I walked out into the rain. I didn't run to my car. I walked slowly. The rain soaked my shirt, but I didn't feel it. I felt light. I felt untethered. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I let out a scream, a raw, primal sound that had been trapped in my chest for decades. Then silence. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah. Hey, she answered on the first ring. Are you okay? I'm done, I said. They uninvited me. Officially. Oh, Zach. I'm so sorry. Don't be, I said. I'm not. Sarah, do you still want to get married? Of course. Whenever you're ready. I'm ready now, I said. But not at the courthouse. I don't want to hide anymore. I want to have a wedding. A real one. On the same day as theirs. Zach, she warned gently. Is this revenge? No, I said, starting the engine. Revenge is petty. This is a correction. They said I'd ruin the atmosphere? Fine. I'm going to create my own atmosphere. And I want you to be the queen of it. Okay, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Let's do it. But we only have 2 months. 2 months is plenty of time, I said, merging onto the highway. I know a guy. That guy was me. And for the first time, I was going to use my skills, my connections, and my secret resources for myself. The next morning, I walked into the sleek glass building that housed Sterling Capital. I wasn't wearing my department store suit. I was wearing a bespoke navy suit that I had kept in the back of my closet. One I usually only wore for high-level meetings with foreign investors who didn't know my last name. I took the private elevator to the top floor. The receptionist nodded at me. Good morning, Mr. Whitmore. Mr. Sterling is waiting for you in the boardroom. I walked in. Arthur Sterling, a man worth $6 billion, stood up and extended his hand. Zachary, he said warmly. Or should I call you the architect? Zachary is fine, Arthur, I said, shaking his hand. We sat down. The table was covered in blueprints for the foundation, the global charity initiative I had designed the infrastructure for. It was a system that cut out overhead costs, ensuring 95% of donations went directly to the cause. It was revolutionary, and it was about to launch. The launch is scheduled for 2 months from now, Arthur said. We need a venue. We need press. We need a face for this. I want to announce you as the co-founder, Zachary. It's time you stepped out of the shadows. I looked at the calendar. The launch date coincided exactly with Liam's wedding in Paris. I have a proposition, I said. Combine the launch with a private event. My wedding. Arthur raised an eyebrow. Your wedding? I didn't know you were planning one. I just started yesterday, I said. I want to host it at the sanctuary in Big Sur. The Cliffside Estate. That's my private estate, Arthur said. I never rent it out. I know. I'm not asking to rent it. I'm asking to borrow it. For the launch. And for Sarah. Arthur studied me for a long moment. He was a man who read people for a living. He saw the fire in my eyes. A different kind of fire than he had seen before. It wasn't just intellect anymore. It was resolve. Done, he said. On one condition. I get to be the best man. Or at least give a speech. I smiled. You can give the speech. The planning began immediately. Because of my background in logistics and my role at the foundation, I had access to a network that my parents could only dream of. I didn't need a wedding planner. I had a team of project managers. We curated the guest list. It wasn't about filling seats with warm bodies. It was about quality. I invited my mentors, my old professors, the colleagues who actually respected me, and Sarah's friends from the hospital. Then came the heavy hitters. Arthur invited his circle, tech moguls, philanthropists, A-list actors who were passionate about the charity. People my mother had cut out of magazines and pasted onto her vision board were going to be eating cake at my wedding. But here was the key: silence. We locked it down. NDAs were signed. No social media posts until the day of. I wanted total radio silence. Meanwhile, I watched my family from afar. They were unraveling. I had set up a Google alert for my father's company years ago. It started pinging. Lawsuit filed against Whitmore Logistics for unpaid vendor invoices. Liens placed on the family property. They were drowning. One afternoon, my phone rang. It was my father. I stared at the screen. Dad calling. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hello, Zachary. His voice was strained. How are you, son? I'm fine, Dad. Busy. What's up? Listen, I know things were tense the last time we spoke. Your mother is just under a lot of pressure. She loves you, you know that. Sure, I said. What do you need, Dad? He hesitated. There's a small cash flow issue with the Paris venue. A wire transfer got stuck. International banking, you know how it is. I need a short-term bridge loan. Just until the trust clears. 10,000. I can pay you back next week. 10,000. That was exactly the amount I had in my known savings account. He knew exactly how much I had. He had probably counted it. I can't, Dad, I said. What do you mean you can't? You have the money. I saw your bank statement when you left it on the counter last Christmas. That money is gone, I lied. I spent it. On what? He demanded, his voice turning angry. Video games? Computers? On a ring, I said. A ring, he scoffed. You bought a ring instead of helping your family? Zachary, this is Liam's wedding. It's the most important day of his life. Are you really going to be that selfish? I learned from the best, I said. If you don't send that money, don't bother coming to us when you need a cosigner for a mortgage. Don't bother asking for help when your little job lays you off. I won't, I said. Good luck in Paris, Dad. I hung up. My hand wasn't shaking this time. 2 days later, I received a strange notification from the Foundation's finance department. Flagged loan application, Whitmore Logistics. My father had applied for a business loan from the very charity I was building. He was trying to borrow money from me without knowing it was me. The application was full of inflated numbers and projected profits that didn't exist. I had 2 choices. I could reject it and watch them crash and burn before the wedding. Or I could approve it, keep the wedding on track, and let them hang themselves with their own rope. I clicked approve. But I added a clause. Full repayment due in 60 days, secured by personal assets. They signed it within the hour. They didn't read the fine print. They never did. They just saw the money and ran. You're playing a dangerous game, Sarah said when I told her. She was trying on her dress. A simple, elegant silk gown that made her look like a Greek goddess. I'm not playing, I said, buttoning my cufflinks. I'm just enforcing the rules they taught me. Contracts matter. Appearances matter. And actions have consequences. The stage was set. Paris was waiting for them. Big Sur was waiting for me. The day arrived. In Paris, it was evening. In Big Sur, it was late morning. I had set up a command center in the library of the estate. On one screen, I had the live feed from my wedding production team. On another screen, I had the social media feed for #Liam and Chloe wedding. My cousin, the one who loved Instagram, was inadvertently my spy. She was live streaming bits of the Paris wedding. It looked okay, but the cracks were showing. The flowers looked slightly wilted. The venue was smaller than they had claimed. It wasn't the main ballroom of the Plaza Athénée. It was a side conference room draped in fabric. It was raining, so the view of the Eiffel Tower was just gray fog. My mother looked stressed. She was snapping at waiters. Liam looked sweaty. Dad looked like he was about to have a heart attack every time a waiter opened a bottle of champagne. Back in Big Sur, the sun was breaking through the mist. The ocean crashed against the cliffs below. The air smelled of salt and wild sage. Guests began to arrive. A black helicopter landed on the helipad. Arthur Sterling stepped out. Behind him, the CEO of Techstar. Then, the editor-in-chief of Vogue, a personal friend of Sarah's mother, a connection my parents never bothered to ask about because they assumed Sarah's family was nobody. We had set up a multi-camera live stream for the foundation launch/wedding. The title of the stream was simple: The Union, Launching the Future. I stood at the altar, looking out at the crowd. There were no sides. Everyone was mixed together. It wasn't about networking. It was about community. Sarah walked down the aisle. She didn't walk to "Here Comes the Bride." She walked to an acoustic version of a song we both loved. She looked radiant. Not expensive. Radiant. As we exchanged vows, the numbers on the live stream started to tick up. 5,000 viewers. 10,000 viewers. 50,000 viewers. The algorithm picked it up. Why? Because Arthur Sterling tweeted, "Proud to be the best man for the most brilliant mind I know. Congrats Zachary and Sarah. #the foundation, #true legacy." That tweet was the match in the powder keg. In Paris, the reception dinner was starting. Phones began to light up. I visualized the scene based on what I learned later. Chloe was the first to see it. She was scrolling through her feed under the table, bored by my father's speech. She saw the trending hashtag. She clicked on the video. She saw me, standing on a cliff, the Pacific Ocean behind me, shaking hands with a man she recognized from the cover of Forbes. "Oh my God," she whispered. She nudged Liam. "Liam, look." "Not now, babe. Dad is talking about legacy again." Liam hissed. "Look." She shoved the phone in his face. Liam squinted at the screen. "Is that Zach? Where is he? Is that Arthur Sterling?" The whisper spread through the room like a virus. "Zachary is getting married. Zachary knows Sterling. Zachary is the founder?" My mother, sensing the shift in the room, the atmosphere she so desperately protected was crumbling, stopped smiling. She looked around. Guests weren't looking at the head table. They were looking at their phones. "What is going on?" she demanded, standing up. My Aunt Beatrice, never one to miss a moment of drama, held up her iPad. "Elena, you have to see this. Zachary is... well, he's trending." Mom grabbed the iPad. On the screen, the ceremony had just finished. Arthur Sterling had taken the microphone. I watched this happen in real time on my monitor later, but in that moment, I was living it. "I want to propose a toast," Arthur said to the crowd in Big Sur, his voice booming over the live stream. "To Zachary, a man who was told he didn't fit the mold. A man who was told he would ruin the atmosphere. Well, look around. He built this atmosphere. He built this foundation. He is the silent partner who has guided my investments for the last 5 years. He is a man of integrity, a man of vision, and my dear friend." In Paris, my mother stared at the screen. She heard the words, silent partner, investments, built this. She saw the guests at my wedding. She saw the luxury that was effortless, not rented on credit. She saw Sarah laughing with the editor of Vogue. And then, she saw the guest list scroll across the bottom of the screen as a thank you to our donors. It was a list of every person she had ever tried to impress, every door that had been closed to her. And they were all there, celebrating the son she had uninvited. The color drained from her face. She swayed. Her hand gripped the tablecloth, pulling a centerpiece down with a crash. He's, she stammered. And then, just like in the hook of a bad soap opera, she fainted. She collapsed right onto the floor of the rented conference room, in her couture gown. In Big Sur, I kissed my bride. I felt a vibration in my pocket. My phone, which I had forgotten to leave behind. It buzzed once, twice, a continuous hum. I pulled it out for a second. Missed call, Mom. Missed call, Liam. Missed call, Dad. Text from Aunt Beatrice. Your mother just hit the floor. This is better than Netflix. I looked at Sarah. She saw the screen. They know? She asked. Everyone knows, I said. I looked into the camera that was live streaming to the world. I knew they might be watching or they would see the replay. This is the moment where I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt like jumping up and down. But I just felt relief. The secret was out. The weight was gone. This is the moment that changed everything, when I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for being patient and walking this path with me. You guys are amazing. Please hit that like button and comment 1 below so I know you're still here with me. It helps more people find this story, but more importantly, it tells me that my experience means something to you. Your support is the fuel that keeps me sharing the rest of this journey. The vibration in my pocket wasn't just a buzz anymore. It was a seizure. My phone was convulsing against my leg, a relentless, physical reminder that the bomb I had planted, or rather, the truth I had simply allowed to be seen, had finally detonated. I stood on the edge of the dance floor at the sanctuary, holding a glass of vintage champagne that cost more than my father's car. The air in Big Sur was crisp, smelling of eucalyptus and the ocean, a stark contrast to the stifling, perfumed air I imagined filled that hotel ballroom in Paris right now. Sarah squeezed my hand. Her palm was warm, grounding me. You haven't looked at it, she said, nodding toward my pocket. You haven't looked at it once since the ceremony ended. I don't need to, I said, though my heart was hammering a rhythm against my ribs that I couldn't quite control. I know exactly what's happening. Zach, she said softly, her eyes searching mine. Your mom fainted. It's all over Twitter. People are saying, well, they're saying everything. I pulled the phone out. The lock screen was a blur of notifications. 38 missed calls from Mom. 22 missed calls from Dad. 50+ messages from Liam. And hundreds of tags on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. I didn't unlock it. Instead, I signaled to Kenji, my personal assistant and one of the few people who knew the full extent of my involvement with the foundation before today. He materialized beside me instantly. Take this, I said, handing him the device. If it's a medical emergency, a real one, verified by a doctor, not a panic attack induced by narcissism, come find me. Otherwise, handle it. Draft a statement for the press, but don't release it until I approve. And keep the lawyers on standby. Understood, boss, Kenji said, slipping the phone into his jacket pocket without blinking. And congratulations again. Thanks, Kenji. Handing over that phone was the ultimate act of liberation. For 34 years, I had been their on-call IT guy, their emotional punching bag, their crisis manager. I had been the one picking up the pieces every time Liam crashed a car or Dad made a bad investment. Not tonight. Tonight, I was the CEO of my own life. I turned back to the party. Arthur Sterling was at the center table, laughing raucously with my old college roommate, Dave, the guy who had tipped me off about the Paris wedding in the first place. I walked over. Zachary, Arthur boomed, raising his glass. I was just telling Dave here about the time you restructured that failing solar grid in Nevada in 48 hours. The man is a machine. I just like things to work efficiently, I said, smiling. Efficiency, Arthur nodded, his face turning serious for a moment. That's what you gave us tonight. You cut the dead weight. Speaking of which, he lowered his voice. My contacts in Paris tell me the atmosphere over there has become, let's say, stormy. He handed me his tablet. You might want to see this. It's from a guest who seems to be enjoying the drama more than the wedding cake. I looked at the screen. It was a live stream from inside the Plaza Athene reception room. The user was my Aunt Beatrice. Of course it was. The video was shaky, filmed surreptitiously from beneath a table napkin. The audio was chaotic. I can't believe it. A woman's voice was hissing in the background. Chloe's mother. I realized. They lied to us. They said he was a low-level technician. They said he was unstable. And now I see him on CNN standing next to Arthur Sterling. The camera panned. I saw my father, Robert. He looked 20 years older than he had that morning. He was cornered by two men in suits, Chloe's father and another man I recognized as a major investor in Dad's firm. Dad was sweating, his comb-over plastered to his forehead. He was gesturing wildly, trying to explain something, but the men weren't listening. They looked furious. Then the camera found Liam, my brother, the golden child. He was sitting alone at the head table. Chloe was gone. He was staring at his phone, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. He looked like a child who had just found out Santa Claus wasn't real, and that Santa had also stolen his girlfriend. I handed the tablet back to Arthur. Looks like a bad investment, I said. The worst, Arthur agreed. I heard Chloe's father is already calling his lawyer. Something about fraudulent misrepresentation regarding the merger. Apparently, your father used the promise of your family's unity and legacy to secure a massive line of credit from him. That unity just evaporated on live television. A chill went down my spine. I knew Dad was desperate, but I didn't know he had legally leveraged the idea of our family to get money. He dug his own grave, I murmured. The party in Big Sur went on until 2 a.m. It was perfect. No drama, no speeches about legacy, just genuine celebration. But as the adrenaline faded, the reality of the morning after began to set in. I woke up at 7 a.m. in the master suite of the estate. Sarah was still asleep, her head resting on my chest. I reached for the bedside table, not for my phone, but for the iPad Kenji had left for me. The headlines were inescapable. The tale of two weddings. How one brother's exclusion led to Silicon Valley's biggest reveal. From rejected guest to secret billionaire. The Zachary Whitmore story. Exclusive. The Whitmore family meltdown in Paris. Police called after groom throws wedding cake. I blinked. Liam threw the cake? I clicked on the article. Apparently, after Chloe had stormed out of the reception shouting about how she didn't sign up for a bankrupt family, Liam had lost it. He had overturned the wedding cake, a 6-tier confection that probably cost more than my first car, and screamed that I had ruined his life. I felt a pang of pity, not regret, pity. Liam had never been taught how to lose. He had never been told no. I had spent my whole life hearing no, so I knew how to build a yes. He was drowning in the first wave of adversity he had ever faced. My phone, which I had finally taken back from Kenji, rang. It wasn't Mom or Dad this time. It was Liam. Sarah stirred. Are you going to answer it? I have to, I said. This is the closure. I slid my finger across the screen and put it on speaker. Hello, Liam. You son of A.B*TCH. His voice was ragged, slurred. He was drunk, or hungover, or both. Are you happy? Are you laughing in your castle right now? I'm not laughing, Liam. I'm actually looking at the ocean. You destroyed me, he screamed, the sound distorting over the connection. Chloe left. She left me, Zach. Her dad pulled the funding. Dad is in the bathroom throwing up because the hotel is demanding payment for the damages and his card was declined. They're threatening to arrest us. Arrest us, Zach. And it's all your fault. I sat up, moving gently so I didn't disturb Sarah, though she was wide awake now, listening with wide eyes. How is it my fault, Liam? I asked calmly. Did I tell you to spend $500,000 you didn't have? Did I tell Dad to lie to investors? Did I tell Mom to uninvite me? You knew, he sobbed. It was a pathetic sound. You knew you were somebody. You let us treat you like garbage when you could have saved us. You could have written a check and fixed everything. Why didn't you fix it? Because you didn't want a brother? I said, my voice hardening. You wanted an ATM. You wanted a scapegoat. You said I'd ruin the atmosphere, remember? Well, I stayed away. I respected your wishes. It's not fair, he whimpered. I was supposed to be the one. I'm the face of this family. You're just the background noise. The background noise just bought the network. Liam, I said. And here is the reality check you've needed since you were 12. There is no inheritance. Grandma's trust? Dad drained that years ago to pay for your consulting firm that never made a profit. The house? It's mortgaged to the hilt. And the only reason the company hasn't collapsed yet is because of a bridge loan I approved through the foundation. Silence. Dead silence on the other end. You? He whispered. The loan was from you? Yes, and it's due in 58 days. Read the contract, Liam. It's secured by personal assets. That means the cars, the jewelry, the house. If that money isn't paid back, the foundation takes everything. And I don't run the collections department. They are very efficient. You can't do that, he pleaded, the anger replaced by sheer terror. We're your family. You have to stop them. You have to extend the deadline. Or just forgive the loan. You have billions. I have a responsibility to my donors, I said, using the same corporate tone my mother used when she told me I couldn't come to Paris. It wouldn't be ethical to misuse charity funds for personal matters. It's better if I don't interfere. I might ruin the atmosphere of the audit. Zach, please. I'm begging you. I'll do anything. I'll publicly apologize. I'll save your salary, Liam. I cut him off. Oh wait, you don't have a real one, do you? I suggest you start looking for a job. A real job. Maybe IT support? I hear they're hiring at the entry level. I hung up. I stared at the phone. My hand was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally severing the limb that had been poisoning me for decades. That was brutal, Sarah whispered. It was necessary, I said. They won't learn if I save them again. They need to fall. Later that afternoon, I received an email from my father's lawyer. It was a cease and desist letter, claiming I had used insider information to sabotage the family business. It was a bluff, a desperate Hail Mary from a man who knew he had already lost the game. I forwarded it to Arthur's legal team with a single note. Handle it. No settlements. I walked out to the cliff's edge. The Pacific Ocean stretched out endlessly before me, vast and indifferent. I thought about the college fund my parents had promised me when I was 18, only to give it to Liam for a gap year in Europe because he needed to find himself. I thought about the promotions I had turned down at my old job to stay local and help them with their taxes. I thought about the custody battle that was likely coming, not over children, but over the remnants of the Whitmore name. They had wanted a legacy. Well, I had given them one. They would go down in history, all right, as the cautionary tale, as the family who threw away a diamond because they were too busy chasing glitter. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the clean, salt air. It's done, I said to the wind, but it wasn't quite over. The loan was ticking, 60 days, and I knew my mother. She wouldn't go down without one final, dramatic scene. She wouldn't fade away. She would try to reinvent the narrative one last time. I turned back to the house where my wife, my real family, was waiting. Let them come. Let them try. I wasn't the invisible son anymore. I was the architect, and I had designed a fortress they couldn't breach. 6 months. That's how long it takes to dismantle a lifetime of lies. If you've been following this story from the beginning, you know that I gave my father's company a bridge loan through the foundation, a lifeline with a 60-day expiration date. I didn't do it to save them. I did it to give them a choice. They could have used that time to downsize, to sell off assets, to humble themselves and pay it back. They didn't. Instead, they doubled down. My father spent the first 30 days trying to sue me. He hired a high-priced lawyer, on credit of course, to argue that I had entrapped the family business. It was laughable. The judge threw it out in less than 10 minutes. Then, They spent the next 20 days trying to smear my name. They leaked stories to the tabloids claiming I was an absentee son, that I had abandoned them in their old age. But here's the thing about the internet. It keeps receipts. The viral video of my mother fainting at the sight of my success was still circulating. The public saw right through them. The golden child narrative didn't work when the golden child was exposed as a 30-year-old man throwing a tantrum over a wedding cake. When day 60 arrived, the silence was deafening. I was sitting in my office at the foundation headquarters, a real office this time with walls of glass overlooking the bay, not a cubicle in a basement. My assistant, Kenji, walked in. "The deadline passed at midnight," he said quietly. "The funds haven't been returned." "Initiate the protocol," I said. I didn't look up from my paperwork. Couldn't. If I looked up, he might have seen the moisture in my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but the sheer, overwhelming weight of finalizing the funeral of my family's legacy. The asset seizure was swift. It wasn't me doing it. It was the bank and the foundation's legal team. It was impartial. It was mathematical. The first thing to go was the Mustang. Liam posted a photo of the tow truck taking it away with the caption, "Betrayed by my own blood." The comments section roasted him alive. People told him to get a job. He deleted his account 2 hours later. Then came the house. The foreclosure notice was slapped on the front door of the colonial mansion my mother loved more than she loved her children. The house where I had fixed the roof in the rain while Liam played video games. The house where I was told I'd ruin the atmosphere. A week before the auction, my mother finally showed up. She didn't call. She didn't text. She just appeared at the reception desk of my building. Security called me. "Mr. Whitmore, there is a woman here claiming to be your mother. She's distressed." "Send her up," I said. When the elevator doors opened, I barely recognized her. Elena Whitmore was a woman who never left her bedroom without full makeup and pearls. Today, she was wearing a tracksuit. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She looked small. She looked old. She walked into my office and stood by the door, clutching a cheap handbag. She looked at the view. She looked at the awards on my shelf. She looked at everything except me. "It's a nice view," she said, her voice cracking. "It is," I said. I didn't offer her a seat. I stood behind my desk, creating a barrier. "Why are you here, Mom?" "We have nowhere to go, Zachary," she whispered. "They changed the locks this morning. Your father, he's sitting in a Motel 6 off the highway. He won't speak. He just stares at the wall." "I warned you," I said. "I told you to sell the house months ago. You could have walked away with some equity. You could have bought a condo. You chose to fight me instead." "We thought you would cave," she snapped, a flash of the old Elena returning. "You always caved. You always fixed it. Why didn't you fix it this time?" "Because I'm not your mechanic anymore," I said calmly. "I'm your son. Or I was." She slumped into the chair opposite my desk, burying her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook. "Why?" she sobbed. "Why do you hate us so much? Is it because of the wedding? Is it because we liked Liam more?" The question hung in the air. Is it because we liked Liam more? She had finally admitted it. I walked around the desk and leaned against the edge, looking down at her. "I don't hate you, Mom," I said. "I pity you, and I need to know one thing. Just one thing, and then I'll help you. Why? Why was I the outcast? I got good grades. I worked hard. I never asked for money. I loved you. Why was I never enough?" She looked up. Her mascara was running. For the first time in 34 years, I saw honesty in her eyes. It was ugly, but it was real. "Because you didn't need us," she whispered. I frowned. "What?" Liam is useless," she said, her voice trembling. "He needs me to tie his shoes. He needs your father to pay his bills. He needs us to survive. That made us feel important. That made us feel like parents." She took a shuddering breath. "But you were 5 years old, fixing your own breakfast. You were 10, fixing the VCR. You were 20, doing our taxes. You never looked at me with that desperate need that Liam did. You were fine on your own. And it terrified me. It made me feel unnecessary, so I pushed you down. I wanted to break you just a little bit so you would need me to put you back together. But you never broke. I stared at her. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It was that I was too capable. My independence was an insult to her insecurity. She loved Liam because his failure validated her existence. She resented me because my success proved she was obsolete. You punished me for being strong, I said. Yes, she whispered. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the city. I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. It wasn't me. It had never been me. Thank you, I said. I needed to hear that. Will you help us? She asked, her voice small again. We have nothing. No inheritance. No salary. Dad's pension is gone. He cashed it out to pay for the Paris deposit. I turned back to her. I won't give you money. You'll just spend it on appearances. And I won't let you live with me. Then what? I'm going to buy the house, I said. Her eyes lit up. You are? Oh, Zachary. Thank God. We can move back in. We can. No. I cut her off. I'm buying the house at the auction tomorrow. And then I'm selling it. Her face fell. What? I'm buying it so the bank doesn't take it for pennies. I'll sell it at market value. I will use the profit to buy a small 2-bedroom condo in the suburbs. I will put the deed in a trust. You and Dad can live there, rent-free, for the rest of your lives. But you will never own it. You can't mortgage it. You can't sell it. A condo? She sneered, looking around my luxurious office. After everything we had? You want us to live in a box. It's a roof over your head, I said. It's more than you deserve. And as for Liam, he's on his own. He's 30. He can figure it out. He'll starve, she cried. Then he'll learn to cook, I said. I pressed the intercom button. Kenji, please escort Mrs. Whitmore out. And call the real estate agent. She stood up. She looked at me with a mixture of hatred and respect. She realized, finally, that the power dynamic had shifted forever. You're a hard man, Zachary, she said. I had good teachers, I replied. The auction was the next day. I didn't go. I sent my lawyer. We won the bid. A week later, I walked through the empty house. It smelled of dust and old memories. I walked into the dining room where the wedding planning meetings had happened. I walked into the sunroom where my mother had told me I couldn't afford a plane ticket. I felt nothing. No nostalgia. No anger. Just the echo of footsteps in a house that was no longer a home. I found a box in the garage that they had left behind. It was full of old photos. I flipped through them. There was Liam blowing out candles. Liam graduating. Liam holding a trophy. And then, at the bottom, I found a Polaroid. It was blurry. It was me, maybe 6 years old, sitting in the driveway, building a castle out of old cardboard boxes. I was smiling. I was building something from nothing. I slipped the photo into my pocket. I left the rest of the box there for the junk haulers. I sold the house 2 months later to a young couple with a baby on the way. They talked about painting the nursery yellow. They talked about filling the house with love. I gave them a discount. I wanted the house to be happy again. My parents moved into the condo. It was clean, safe, and utterly ordinary. My father got a part-time job as a greeter at a hardware store to pay for groceries. He told people he was doing it to stay active. I let him keep his pride. Liam moved in with a friend, sleeping on a couch. Last I heard, he was working at a car rental agency. He texted me once, asking for a reference. I wrote him one. I said he was personable and eager. It was the truth. It was the only help he was going to get. Sarah and I didn't go to Paris for our honeymoon. We went to Japan. We turned off our phones. We ate sushi at 4 a.m. and walked through ancient temples. We talked about our future. Are you afraid? She asked me one night in Kyoto. About becoming a father? Sarah was 4 months pregnant. We had found out the week after the wedding. I used to be, I admitted. I was afraid I'd be like them, that I'd play favorites, that I'd make my child feel invisible. And now Now I know exactly what not to do, I said. I have the perfect anti-manual. We laughed. It was a light, easy sound. When we returned to the States, the custody battle over the family narrative had ended. The press had moved on to the next scandal. I was no longer the viral groom. I was just Zachary Whitmore, businessman, husband, and soon-to-be father. But there was one loose end. One evening, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small velvet box and a note. I opened the box. It was my grandmother's ring, the one Mom had sworn was lost years ago, the one she refused to let me use to propose to Sarah. The note was in my father's handwriting. Shaky, jagged script. Zachary, I found this in your mother's vanity when we were packing. She hid it. She said you couldn't afford to insure it. I think she just didn't want you to have it. I'm sorry. For the wedding. For the business. For everything. I'm not a bad man, Zach. Just a weak one. And weak men make terrible fathers. Give it to your daughter one day. Dad. I held the ring up to the light. It was beautiful, but it felt heavy. It carried the weight of generations of secrets. What is that? Sarah asked, walking into the room. An heirloom, I said. It's gorgeous, she said. It is, I said. I looked at it for a moment longer. Then I put it back in the box and closed the lid with a snap. But we're not keeping it, I said. Why not? Because we don't build our future on their past, I said. I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to put the money into a college fund for our baby. A real fund. One that no one can touch. Sarah smiled and kissed my cheek. That sounds like a plan. 3 months ago, my daughter was born. We named her Maya. When the nurse handed her to me, I was terrified. She was so small, so fragile. I looked down at her face, her tiny eyes blinking against the harsh hospital lights, and I felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it almost brought me to my knees. I held her close. I counted her fingers. I whispered to her. I see you, I said. I see you, Maya. And I will always see you. It was a promise. A vow more sacred than any I had made in a boardroom or a church. My parents haven't met her. They sent a card. My mother signed it Grandma Elena, as if that title was automatically bestowed by biology. I put the card in a drawer. Maybe one day when Maya is older, I'll explain who they are. Or maybe I won't. Being a grandparent is a privilege, not a right. And privileges have to be earned. Liam is still figuring it out. I heard from a mutual friend that he's taking night classes in marketing. He's actually doing the work. Maybe rock bottom was the foundation he needed all along. I hope he succeeds. Truly, I do. But I'll watch from a distance. I can't be his safety net anymore. I have my own tightrope to walk. My life now is quiet in the best way. The foundation is thriving. We've built 20 schools in the last year. We've funded clean water projects for 500,000 people. Every time I sign a check or cut a ribbon, I think about that boy sitting in the driveway, building castles out of cardboard. I think about how hard he tried to be good enough. I wish I could go back and tell him, you don't need to earn their love. You just need to love yourself enough to walk away. People often ask me if I regret how it all went down. If I regret the viral video, the public shaming, the destruction of my family's reputation. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I could have been softer. If I could have just paid the debt quietly and let them live in their illusion a little longer. But then I look at Sarah. I look at Maya sleeping in her crib. And I realize that you can't build a healthy home on top of a toxic waste dump. You have to clear the ground. You have to dig out the rot. It's messy. It's painful. But it's the only way to grow. My revenge, if you want to call it that, wasn't about destroying them. It was about saving myself. It was about drawing a line in the sand and saying, this far and no further. They wanted me to be invisible. They wanted me to be the ghost in the family photos. Well, they got their wish. I am invisible to them now. But to the rest of the world, and more importantly, to the people who actually matter, I am vivid. I am present. I am here. I learned that family isn't about whose DNA you share. It's about who stands beside you when the rain starts to fall. It's about who invites you to the table, not who asks you to wait in the kitchen. For anyone out there listening to this, for anyone who feels like the outsider in their own home, for anyone who has ever been told they would ruin the atmosphere just by being themselves, don't wait for an invitation. Don't beg for a seat. Build your own table. Cook your own feast. Invite the people who love you for your small thinking and your serious eyes. And if the people who raised you can't see your worth, that is their blindness, not your darkness. You are not the problem. You are the solution they were too foolish to understand. Walk away, and don't look back. The view from the other side is spectacular. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive, but sharing it with you has been the final step in my healing. If the story resonated with you, if you've ever felt excluded or undervalued, I want you to know you're not alone. Please do me one last favor. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. I have so much more to share about how to build a life on your own terms. And share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who needs permission to choose themselves. Leave a comment below with the word freedom if you made it to the end. I'll be reading every single one of them. This is Zachary signing off. Take care of yourselves. You deserve it.